3 months, and some countries have been successful to control and others have not. As discussed in previous videos, these countries, especially in the East, who had a previous experience with SARS, they were the most successful in controlling the disease because of previous positive experience. These countries include the South Korea, Singapore, Japan, etc., have implemented the right strategy, therefore have managed to control their epidemics sooner than other countries. In fact, they have already started to gradually normalize their economic activities. Others that didn't have any effective plan or strategies to start with and currently rely on the lockdowns and curfews that continue to harm people and their economy with a little success in controlling long-term coming back of the COVID-19. So, following the successful example is the right thing to do and dump the failed Western models and not relying on them. Such harsh activity basically cannot continue forever and have to be ended at earliest possible time point, but gradually. This ending should be based on the knowledge, information, and systematically then should be able to relax both internal and external restrictions. Supply chains must begin and people must be allowed to get back to their normal lives, and industries should be gradually allowed to their functions, productions, distribution and sales. It is noteworthy that the current situation with the COVID-19 is not plague, as that happened a century ago. So, when the new cases of COVID-19 is subside, authorities must start relaxing restriction, begin with areas that they previously never had infection or had few infection. But while maintain the principle of not having larger congregations, functions and ceremonies for longer duration. In fact, none of these are considered essential, so there's no rush at all to reinitiating these larger gathering of any kind. Instead, get the people get back to work and make livelihood and survive. So those who are enforcing hard restriction are all government servants and not private citizens. They're all paid by the taxpayers' money and supposed to serve the people. Unfortunately, the overwhelming majority, including the politicians and government administrators, uniformly have forgotten that once they get appointed this position of power and acquisition of power as they wish. This is a universal phenomena reflecting the power mentality, leading to forgetting the reality and the common people. Take this COVID-19 opportunity as a great option, starting from now, to implement the original concept of all taxpayers funded position are not only accountable but also responsible to the people and must serve the people. Ironically, this 10% of the privileged population virtually is suffering nothing from the harsh situation and restriction they themselves enforced, but all the other publics is facing. Whereas up to 25% of the daily and weekly earners in the countries suffers the most. Themselves and their families are going hungry for weeks now and even potential deaths, but because of the restriction, no one knows any statistics. Another, up to 30% of the adult population who are self-employed are the next most affected. Because of the continuation of harsh control and restriction and economic crackdown by the governments, many of them will lose their livelihood permanently. How is more than half of the population going to survive in the immediate future? Unlike the government servants and their elite who can rely upon their bank accounts if they lose their jobs, salaries or suspended from their duties, most others do not have that luxury. Small businesses are going bankrupt. Who's going to bail them out? Government must immediately arrange a system for them to obtain interest-free loans through the banks to pay their debt and get restarted their businesses. This is good for all of them, especially the government and the country. It is a time for governments to come back to the reality and understand that their key function is to protect the country and its people, help the economy, and indeed serving the public. Everything else they do is supposed to be facilitating the above mentioned. During emergency situation, this assumed power and the control by any means mentality unfortunately always get worse, and the needs of the public is totally ignored as is happening now. This is very unfortunate as we all are human beings, but this too somehow is getting forgotten during the periods as this is happening in some countries even today. It is essential to realize that in contrast to dictatorships and communist countries, in a democratic society and the countries where have democratic governments, except for the bureaucratic jobs, government is incapable of creating or even having any potential of creating jobs for the public. It's always done by the public sector. So help the public sector to get going, creating new jobs and kickstart the economy now. The vast number of jobs created by the public sector, both small and large businesses, equally are the main live wire of the economy of any country. They are the ones who pay the taxes to the treasury that the government is to totally rely upon to function and to pay their own salaries. Therefore, the second most important function of the government is to reduce regulation, increase export opportunities, and facilitate the business opportunities